Hi, good evening to everyone. Thank you for joining me. I'm Dr. Philip Macmillan, and I continue to bring you science right at the front, right at the cutting edge, looking forward, and most critically, preparing you for what may be to come. Nipah virus in India, it's getting a lot of attention. But is this attention because it is doing so much damage in India? Or are we being prepped for what could be coming in the weeks and months ahead? For anyone who has asked questions from the beginning with regards to the COVID pandemic, you will understand exactly what I'm talking about. For those who don't quite know what I mean, this will seem quite nebulous. But overall, this is still an important discussion. We are going to cover some things that I only found out about in the past few hours with Professor Banerjee. So, what I'll ask you to do is please remember to like, to subscribe, and critically comment on where you are in the world. I'll always try and share where people are in the world as it helps people to understand that we have a good, broad audience. So, without further ado, let's bring in Professor Amitav Banerjee. Amitav, I will just ask you first to quickly introduce yourself before we get into our discussion.
Good evening, Philip. It's a pleasure to come on this platform and good evening to all the viewers. I am Professor Amita Banerjee. I am a qualified medical doctor and a medical epidemiologist. I have served in the armed forces for 27 years, 2 decades as an epidemiologist. And after that, I was in academics for 20 years as a professor of epidemiology and public health. And now I am, for 2 years, I am Professor Emeritus of the same institution, and I have been having a lot of field experience investigating outbreaks of infectious disease in the armed forces in various parts of India. And during the COVID pandemic, also, I was heading a team which carried out the contact tracing in our corporation area, and we did zero surveys and published it, one of the first zero surveys in India, where we found the infection fatality rate to be around 0.17% in our population, much less than what was initially projected. So that is my background. And this Nipah virus also, since the past years, many years, I have been following, and I am quite into it. And so I'm happy to share my views on this.
Excellent. Thank you. So, the first thing, I guess, is that the world is hearing that there is an outbreak of this Nipah virus in India. What is the reality? Is it that hundreds of people are dying, people are sick, hospitals are overwhelmed? What really is going on?
Philip, certainly not. As an epidemiologist, we have to see who are infected, where it is taking place, how many are getting infected, how many are transmitting. By this criteria, we identify the risk, the pandemic risk, an epidemic risk, or even an outbreak risk. So the Nipah virus is a sporadic and a recurrent problems, and I would rate it as an occupational hazard rather than uh, which can affect the general population, rather than an infection which can affect the general population. I have been tracing the history. 1999, there was a first recognized Nipah virus was first recognized in Malaysia, and the pigs were infected. And how the pigs got infected? From the fruit bat. They were eating the infected fruits which were contaminated by the fruit bats, and the pigs got infected. And those who were handling the pigs, the industry, the pork industry got hit badly, and it spread to Singapore also, imported pork. And that was the major outbreak in 1999. More than 265 Malaysians got infected, and 105 died. So that gives the mortality rate above 40 to 50%. And in Singapore, 11 people got infected and one died. So probably they were caught on the wrong foot. After that, it had occurred in Bangladesh. It had occurred in Bangladesh. It had occurred in India, West Bengal, and in Kerala. And all those occurrences have been linked with the occupational exposure to the fruit bats, Fruit bats is the reservoir. Pigs got infected by eating the contaminated fallings from the fruits, and the saliva of the fruit bats. And the poor people go into these jungles, and they sometimes feed on the fruit bats, or they. There is a season where there is a date palm trees in West Bengal, in Bangladesh, where they take out jaggery, a special form of jaggery from this date palm kind of fruits, which are also which also attracts the fruit bats. And sometimes the villagers, they take the raw sap, which can be contaminated with the virus from the fruit bat. So this is the main, and then they may come to some hospital, and some health workers, very intimate contact is required. So it has not been like presently the two health workers have been found infected. They are admitted. There have been no mortality, and they have tested 190 contacts, and not a single one have been found positive. So that shows that it is not transmissible in the general sense to create a pandemic.
And so, why do you think it is being given so much global attention? Any thoughts about that?
People are on their toes after the COVID trauma, I would say. They are in a sort of a post traumatic stress disorder. So the lightest sound is making them start. So this is and the WHO and the virologist, microbiologist, they have identified Nipah as a potential candidate for the next pandemic in the batting order. So it is just waiting to march to the crease, I would say. And it has become a spectator sport, because now everything is on viruses. Attention is that, without studying the broad epidemiology, without studying the social epidemiology, that it is the poverty which are exposing people to this type of hazardous, I would say, viruses. And if we and the emphasis on the lethality, 40% lethality, 70% lethality. Agreed, it is a lethal virus, but if it doesn't come and chase you, you have to go in front of it. Like if you go in front of a moving train, you will 100% lethal. So if you know how it is transmitted, you can just, if people have to handle it, if they have to be educated not to take the raw sap of the fruit or the date palm, they should take proper precautions. They should not handle. And once they heat the thing, because when they made jaggery, they heat it, the virus is killed. So eating those jaggery and eating those sweets, it poses no risk. There is no risk. There is no risk of transmission to person also, until unless there is a very intimate exchange of body fluids. And Indian hospitals are very crowded. And
Yeah.
I think the hospital,
I want to ask you an important thing, because I didn't know about this fact until just recently, and it was because of something you had said. And I think it's important for the audience to know, because as we go into the conversation further, they will realize why I think, even though it doesn't appear to be a problem now, I think people should be very careful about what happens next. So here we have an article from the Hindustan Times. And in case you don't realize, this was on February 7th, 2020. Okay. And what this was they halted a Nipah project with an Indian lab. Government tells US health agency. So the CDC was funding this research at the time. The COVID brought awareness about this, and the Indian government closed it down, the research on the Nipah virus. Can you tell us what was going on at that time?
it was something which was, I mean, beyond belief. When I first read it, I couldn't believe it. This is Indian government was not aware of it. I mean, it almost it was clandestine research, clandestine underground research. The US government, the CDC was funding a private lab in South India, Manipal Institute of Virological Research, which did not have the facilities beyond BSL 2. I mean, BSL Two means you are not you don't have the capacity to handle highly virulent pathogens like a Nipah virus, which requires the highest standard of safety, that is BSL-4. And WHO classifies Nipah virus as risk group 4, that is the highest risk. And this CDC and the US government was funding a private lab to carry out research on Nipah virus, and this lab was handling the Nipah virus in an ill-equipped lab, and the Indian government was not aware of it. I mean, this is the which is most surprising. The Indian government was not aware of it, and one of the government officials, one can say whistleblower, under conditions of anonymity, that person spoke to the Hindustan Times, to the journalist, and he revealed that Nipah virus has the potential of being a bioweapon. So that is a concern. After what happened in the Wuhan lab, suspected to have happened, if they are doing research on a virus which affects, in the past 27 years since it was identified, the total deaths have not crossed 500. From Nipah virus mortality, total deaths have not crossed 500. Means it affects only very focused groups. Where is the need for so much research on a thing which is not causing that amount? In India, every day we lose 500 people in road traffic accidents. Daily, 500 people, whereas in 27 years globally, total deaths have been just 500 from Nipah. And one knows the epidemiology of it. One knows it is an occupational hazard. One can educate the villagers. One could educate the people who handle this. As I said, I would consider it an accident, an occupational accident, getting accidentally exposed to the fruit bat. And the exposure risk is much less than going on Indian roads and getting 500 people getting killed daily. If you just go by statistics, I would, in fact, there have been more aircraft accidents, deaths in the past 27 years. I think more than 500 people have died from air accidents. So why the airports are screening for, I mean, for Nipah virus, which has not killed 500 in 27 years, and why it is not banning all aircrafts, because that is killing more. I mean, I'm just talking, if they are playing with numbers, I can also play with numbers. I mean, just to reassure the people that we are at risk, and we have to take it in the context. We have to take the risk in the context.
So let me just make it clear so people understand. In 2018 and 19, funding was coming from the CDC to support a private lab in India to look at the Nipah virus. And I think that they were saying it was just more technical expertise. They didn't seem as though they had a knowledge of whether or not they were actually handling the virus. It's not clear, but it was clearly serious enough for the Indian government to say to suspend that research immediately. And they did this in February of 2020 because all of the countries across the world, after they saw what happened with COVID, and some people will still argue that it was a natural evolution, but I think any government would know that there is a risk with a lab close incident. And so all the countries suddenly looked at it, which is where India then found that this was happening in a sense. I wouldn't call it covertly, but it hadn't gone through standard channels of reporting for the health ministry to make a decision. How do you think that is possible? How did that happen?
I would be blunt. It was off the record, because any funding from a foreign agency or even a philanthropist, any foreign currency, it has to go through Indian government regulations, that is FCRA regulations, Foreign Currency Regulatory Authority. Without the clearance, we cannot take a single penny. So if they have taken money, if they have taken funding, I would say, I mean, I wouldn't trust the intentions of the scientist. I mean, we are very vulnerable. I mean, particularly when the whistleblower has said that this can be a potential bioweapon. I mean, government official, government scientists, under conditions of anonymity, declaring that this can be a possible bioweapon. So a possible, I have got an army background. In the army background, we cannot leak military secrets to foreign governments without the government of India, bypassing the government of India. So if the scientists have leaked any information about a virus, the very fact they are getting funding from a foreign country means that their intentions are not very honorable, just for career promotion, I would say, or whatever immediate. It may not be exactly corruption, because there is a lot of pressure for grants nowadays, for academic advancement, for research, and grants. People are desperate, and the CDC, I would say, or the other funders are exploiting the desperation of academicians and scientists to push forward research. And sometimes I think the scientists may not understand the implications. I mean, scientists, some of those scientists who work with the microscope, with the lab, with the genomics, they don't know the wider implications of being misused as a bioweapon. And it is reported in Hindustan Times that the vaccine, when CDC manufactures the vaccine based on this research, the Indian government or Indian scientists would not get any patent. The work will be done by the Indian scientists clandestinely, without the knowledge of the Indian government. That was the purpose. And when vaccines would have developed and deployed, they wouldn't have got any patent, or any proprietary rights
Yes,
wouldn't have.
and when we look at the article, again, this is, if you just joined us, this is from February 2020. Our apprehension is that the lab was being used to map the Nipah virus, which can be used to develop a vaccine, the intellectual property right of which will not be with India. And so, importantly, understanding how the human body reacted to the virus would also produce a more virulent form of virus for biological warfare. So they picked up straight away that this was pretty serious, and they then went ahead to stop the ongoing research. But I think this is where I want to ask a very pointed question to you, Amitav. What are your opinion?
I am surprised.
Hold on. The question is, when we look at what happened with COVID, and the fact that after 6 years, there is still an argument about where did this virus come from? Was it the natural evolution in the fruit bats and ended up in a wet market, or was it a lab engineered virus? The fact that we still have no absolute clarity on it, is that a mistake from the scientific global community to not have forced this issue?
Definitely, definitely, and that's why I'm surprised that the same dynamics are occurring in India, and government of India came to know about it. Just telling the CDC to stop the research is not adequate deterrent, because after that there is no follow up. There is no follow up in, say, Indian Parliament. There is no debate on it. There is no fixing of responsibility. There is no fixing of accountability. So this is a bad precedence, because scientists would be, free to take grants from anyone now. I mean, just telling that just stop the research, that is not adequate deterrent, because this should be understood, about the gravity should be understood in proper context, when it can turn into a bioweapon. And as on today, as I have been telling many times, the pandemic potential is not there. It's unfortunate. It's an accident. Those who contracted, the fatality is high, agreed. But that fatality, the very fact that fatality is high, does not transmit it, because those who get sick, they get isolated. They do not move around. So if it is converted into a bioweapon by making it less fatal but more transmissible, you can, with the initial data of 40% mortality, and you say that it has spread now, and you make it more transmissible, there can be a huge public panic. And then, the next step is the vaccines are up the sleeve, because a lot of work has already been done on developing a vaccine. A demand can be created for a vaccine which, as on today, if a vaccine is there, I am not against vaccine, but vaccine as on today can be focused protection for those occupational groups who are handling the uh, fruit bats, who are handling the fruits, date palm and other things, who are exposed to the fruit bats. So that, but not for the general population. As on today, if you do not tamper with the virus, so the only worry as on today is if somebody tampers with the virus, like they want to do gain of function research, which was banned or paused rather some years back, but again it has started. So as long as gain of function research is there, the next zoonosis will not come from the jungle, it may come from the lab, a
Well,
clandestine lab.
you'll be glad to know that there are vaccines being developed. So this is from the NIH, and this was from July 2022. And this was an mRNA Nipah virus vaccine that I think went through the phase 1 trials, and they're looking at phase 2. This is with Moderna. And so they are preparing, it's part of the pandemic preparedness plan published earlier that year. So you can see that there is a degree of preparedness for another virus to appear that can do lethal damage to the world. Now, it's important to understand our last pandemic before 2020 was 1918, almost 100 years, just over 100 years. Why in the world would we think that pandemics are so frequent that we need to prepare for one almost every decade now? What is it? Is that viruses have just randomly become more lethal? Or, as you said, are more gain of function experiments being done which put whole populations at risk? I mean, this is frightening stuff, because in case people are not aware, I said this before and I will say it again, without the furin cleavage site on the COVID virus, it would not have been a pandemic. Now, it could have happened naturally. It's about 1 trillion to 1 chance. And so we will say, okay, it could have happened naturally. But the point being is that if something like that was put on any other virus that gives it the capability to infect far more human type cells, that would be pretty serious. I mean, it's frightening, to be honest. And I really am worried. And this is why I'm saying that people need to recognize that it is unusual for this huge ramp up of attention. And it makes you wonder whether or not anything else is coming behind it.
It's ominous. I mean, the screening of travelers from India in the Southeast Asia, Malaysia of all places, where the actual Nipah started. They are screening now. Just 2 cases in India, 190 screened contacts, none found positive. They are not stressing on that. So where is the spread? As I said, it's an accident, those who come in direct contact with the virus. Maybe healthcare workers, and healthcare workers are exposed because the government hospitals, public healthcare structures are in bad shape in most countries, and there are no proper infection control practices. Healthcare workers also, if they follow proper infection control protocols, they will not get infected because very intimate contact is required. So it may be some sad equipment, sad needles, or very poor working conditions. And so there is definitely, as you said, there is no cause for, I mean, the vaccine is not indicated on such a large scale. Vaccine, and even occupational groups also, if they take the basic precautions of avoiding the fruit bat contaminated substances, fruits, they also can, it can be controlled, because there are just 2 cases, 3 cases, 10 cases, and no secondary spread. So a focused protection, and if you follow the science here, there will be no profit from vaccine, because those, it won't scale up. So for to scale it up, you require some, perhaps make it more transmissible, some gain of function research, or by gain of media. I mean, nowadays the media takes over, And some scientists also come who do not understand the whole context, because most of them are working as virologists, most as clinicians. The basic social epidemiology, the how the ecology, because people are making just mathematical models from their laptops. So that shoe leather epidemiology of our era, when we used to go on the field and see and actually explore like how this infectious disease are spread. Like I have worked in tribal areas, in tribal malaria, see the vector, how it moves, who are exposed, and we could control many things by just common sense, I would say, not by rocket science. So now everything is done by rocket science. They directly go to mRNA. That is the latest toy in the hand of the scientist, and there is a lot of funds in that. I mean, other than a lot of people get the skin in the game, because those who invest, they have already invested, so they have to have returns. Then scientists have to have papers, scientists have to have research, then everybody gets up benefited. But the real health, particularly I am worried about countries like India and many other countries. Like most other countries are facing the public health hospitals and public health infrastructure. I believe even the NHS is going through a crisis of real basic care, basic primary care. And even if you say, if you want to have a pandemic, these vaccines won't save you. The health services will save you. Vaccines would be a tool, additional tool. You cannot go and fight a war with just rifles without soldiers. Now we are having a lot of rifles and ammunition, but we don't have soldiers well deployed. Like we have a lot of doctors in the urban areas and metropolises, but in the rural areas, like in the district hospitals, and everybody is becoming subspecialist, super specialist. We require general surgeons. There's a crisis of general surgeons, there's a crisis of general physicians who can treat 90% of the diseases. Now everything is compartmentalized, and above that, new emerging viruses are coming out from the lab. I mean, that's something which is complicating the issues. We are going into more and more complexity, and this complexity is not understood by the medical profession, because each one is in the lane and by lane. Nobody is knowing what's happening, the big picture. So each one
So
is compartmentalized.
yeah, I think that when I looked at Nipah and in more detail, I found a similar pattern, and this is part of the research I've been looking at with regards to immune dysregulation. And more, I am becoming convinced that some of the most lethal diseases that we know of, Ebola, dengue hemorrhagic fever, COVID, it's not the virus necessarily that is killing people. It's the immune response where the immune system gets dysregulated. You can call it autoimmunity or immune dysregulation that drives a cytokine storm that then kills the person. And one of the important points that I was making, even with regards to COVID, because when you look at Nipah, it still also causes a vasculitis, very similar to what happens in COVID. And so, if you are stimulating immune systems and then the immune system is dysregulated further on exposure to the virus, you can sometimes compound the problem, which is why, say, for instance, with dengue fever, it's so difficult to find a vaccine, because if you use the wrong type, you can then trigger an abnormal immune response. This is very complex science, and it seems as though the scientific, medical and scientific community is taking on the God complex of thinking that they can produce stuff that is better than nature and natural immunity, making it superior. Any thoughts about that?
Exactly, Philip. That's right. We are overlooking the host factors, as you rightly said, and that goes with my suggestion also, that we are doctors are getting compartmentalized. A person who is studying the virus is only studying the virus. He or she is not studying the body's response, as you said, the immune response or other dynamics, which are again very difficult. So they are just hitting arrows in the dark by just injecting anything which they think works in the lab, works according to logic, but they don't know how the body reacts. Like even like different viruses, few people will get some abnormal immune response. It's autoimmune or whatever. And when you add on to it a number of doses of a foreign antigen in a vaccine or whatever, that also you are adding to the immune whatever stress to the body or immune complexity. Because I get lost when I go into finer details. That epidemiologist only counts numbers and patterns. So that I mean, but at least I am talking from common sense. If you are adding too many things in a cocktail, and because there may be so many viruses waiting to be identified, like Nipah got identified in 1999, and the other scientists will identify something else and they will develop a vaccine for that. So it would be, I mean, there are hundreds of viruses to be. So is it logistically feasible to develop so many vaccines, and is it advisable to piecemeal solutions rather than overall just focused protection, that somebody like workers in the jungles may be exposed to fruit bats, so protect them against Nipah. Somebody else may be exposed to something else, to protect them, rather than making it across the board and creating as if any pandemic will affect everyone homogeneously.
Yes.
It is, it
I
is
think
not like
that
that.
this is probably hopefully the takeaway I thought would have come out of COVID, but it didn't, which is that there are different risks to different parts of the population. You do not treat them exactly the same, and these are points that I thought was obvious when we looked at the science from the pandemic, but it looks as though it's been lost in the drive to find solutions that are financially viable. Here is an interesting bit of information. I'll share it with you and the audience. That this is from Nipah, from the CEPI. And they are talking about Nipah here, the characteristics of it, where does it occur, what are the symptoms, and how is CEPI responding to this Nipah virus. So this is in the background, and this organization has supported 4 early stage Nipah vaccine candidates, 2 of them in active development. And in late 2025, one of these candidates became the first in the world to enter phase 2 clinical trials taking place in Nipah affected Bangladesh. So they are testing phase 2 trials, a vaccine in Bangladesh. And they are there. This is who it is. They, as CEPI, is this is the primary investor or backer for why they exist, to accelerate the development of vaccines and other biological countermeasures against epidemic and pandemic threats so that they can be accessible to all people in need. So what that means is that the WEF, who is concerned clearly about global population and the impact on it, they are trying to find solutions to save as many lives as they can by developing vaccines for unusual pathogens. Am I being sarcastic here?
You're right. They didn't learn from Africa also. Africa didn't get vaccine. They didn't have COVID also. I mean, to that extent as other countries. So they should have, Africa should have taught them a lesson if they are, if they really want to look around. That's actual epidemiology, to see patterns. They got the
I
least
think
vaccine.
that I think that one of the big challenges I have is that I I know that vaccines are very important in our whole epidemiological framework. And there is a very important place for them to help protect the population. But it feels like it has, as you said, it's become a toy. It's become something that you can just use anywhere, anytime, anything, no matter how many doses. Don't worry about the impacts. This is great. And that doesn't sit right to me, because in my mind, every intervention in health carries risk, and everything you do is trying to minimize the need to intervene in the natural processes of someone. If someone can get better without antibiotics, you don't give them antibiotics just because you have it. And so in the same way, I am worried that there doesn't seem to be that degree of I don't know what the word is. It's almost as if vaccines are in a completely different category. We can do them as many as we want, and there are no concerns to the public. I can't. That just does not sit right with me scientifically. What are your thoughts?
You're very right, Philip. There is another serious concern, and I am experiencing it daily. I get people contact me. They are not having faith in genuine vaccines, also, which are well proven. Like people are refusing tetanus vaccine. People are refusing even rabies vaccine. It's a difficult thing. I mean, those who are time-tested vaccine, say measles vaccines in the malnourished child. I mean, again, we have been indiscriminately vaccinating everyone for scaling it up. But if we give focus, people will have more faith when they see, ki, yes, I am at risk. Say, I am at risk of Nipah. I go, and when you show them the data that those who are going to the forest are getting, so they may. But if you tell to the general population, and if there is any side effect, he would realize that I was never at risk, and then he or she would refuse all vaccines. So that all the advances we have made in vaccine will go back. I mean, we will. It's unfortunate. I mean, people are becoming very cynical. I could sense it when talking with them. And it's become difficult to convince them that these are vaccines which are definitely, which really protects. I mean,
Yeah, and
some
I
people even questioning the smallpox vaccine. I mean, which was one of the major successes we had, because people think that was also a hoax. I mean, that is the way it has come now.
and so it's a difficult balance, Amitav. I found this with regards to COVID because I am very, very specific when I talk about what happened in the pandemic, where I think the mistakes were it was definitely overuse at a population level of a technology that wasn't fully understood in a virus that they didn't fully understand either. And the implications and the repercussions are now coming back to the scientific and medical community, where the public no longer trusts that we are independent and we are able to challenge. And this is the funny thing, is that we are supposed to be advocating for patients. Why is it strange for us to challenge when industry or anyone else, politicians, are trying to do things that could be a detriment to the population? Why is that becoming so difficult?
Philip, I think this is because now doctors are becoming very busy because they are working in a narrow specialty, so they just do not think holistically, or they don't see the. So they have already been divided among themselves. There is no cohesion, and most of the societies, especially medical societies, say American Association of Pediatrics or American Association of Public Health, they are also heavily sponsored by the manufacturers. So they also have some sort of a career interest, vested interest, and so many interests. Even now, medical journals are also controlled to some extent, perhaps large extent, which has also been brought out in editorial by, say, former editor of New England Journal, uh, British Medical Journal, Richard Smith, that they are becoming an extension arm of the industry by, I mean, promoting those research which promotes interventions which are sometimes not always well established or in a rush, and any any criticism is not looked upon very well by the
No,
mainstream
a
people.
lot of people may not know this, Amitav, that you are one of the most published publications, scientific publications. You do quite a lot of publications, so you understand the industry, and you understand, and you are also an editor on a scientific publication as well, so you understand the challenges. But
Yeah.
there doesn't seem to be an easy way for the scientific community to get beyond these things if they have to get published. And this is a
Yeah.
problem for career scientists. They need to get published, so they have to go on the bandwagon.
Yeah, yeah, that is right. I mean, in fact, I don't advise young scientists to stick their neck out. I mean, because they can't survive then. I mean, they have been, so the whole ecosystem has become something. I mean, very, very deep. It's become a minefield, I would say. I mean, everywhere there are hazards. I mean, you don't know
Now,
whom to. No, I mean, the trust factor is the biggest casualty.
I'm going to be, as we're coming to the close, Amitav, I'm going to be putting a concept in front of you. And this is my thought. And just in case the audience is listening, I'm just saying what is in my head at the moment. My thought is that when I look at what's happening in the background with the attention that is being put on Nipah virus and the global political situation at the moment, where there are wars, rumors of wars, there are lots of financial things going in the background, it seems that it would be convenient for there to be another pandemic. Okay? And it almost feels as though the stage is being set for another novel virus that has pandemic potential to coincidentally appear very soon. And this seems as though why the attention is focused on this at this time. So the question is, suppose there was gain of function on a Nipah virus where it was far more transmissible, it didn't kill as quickly, and so therefore it was able to spread across the population. That would be a disaster. What could or would we be able to do?
We have to take a preemptive action. Like there should be an international treaty banning gain of function research. If the WHO is concerned about the next pandemic, rather than a pandemic treaty, all governments should force a treaty to ban gain of function research. So that would reduce the risk of such mishaps because it is now vulnerable. Scientists are vulnerable. The very fact that the government of one of the largest country, India, and a democracy is not aware that in their backyard, uh, America is funding their scientists. I mean, that means these are things which are just, it may be just the tip of the iceberg. There may be many other scientists, desperate scientists, who would be leaking out or conducting such clandestine research. I mean, underground research. So I think a sort of a scientific mafia has evolved over time, who are working away from the flashlight, and it is very dangerous. I mean, it is very dangerous.
Yeah, these are serious times, and so at the same time, for my audience, who I know I can see many of the comments that are coming up, and I think that what the point that I want to make to people is that one, they don't underestimate that COVID is still circulating because this is by far the most dangerous virus I've ever seen. Even though it doesn't appear to cause huge damage across the population in people who are still being infected in highly vaccinated regions. And so, if there was something else like this to occur, on top of what we have with the population being so immune suppressed, I mean, that would be catastrophic. And I used to think that this would be unlikely, but the longer that I see what's happening and the further the deflection goes away from doing the detailed research that should have been done in 2020 and 2021 about origins, I think that we are now positioned where the world is vulnerable. If there are people who have an agenda using gain of function research, they have been, in a sense, given a green light to try again or to try because they recognize the world is not actually going to make a huge fuss about it. I think that that is probably my biggest concern. It's that the public, and I say everyone, is involved here by not demanding answers. We have given a green light to people who are thinking about this because they are realizing that if it did happen, they could potentially get away with it. I think that's the most frightening thing that I've realized. Any thoughts on that?
I agree with you, Philip. I agree with you because the very fact that 5 years have elapsed since this came to light, that a
Six,
private
six
6
years.
years, 6 years, and the Wuhan fiasco or the leak or whatever has not been investigated, and in both the cases, the hands are pointing to USA, and of course, CDC has changed now, but we don't know it has really changed or not because it has got another. Because in both the occasions, the we can trace it to USA. All this research, clandestine research or underground research, and I don't know whether the governments, and this is a very mild reaction on the part of the Indian government that just stop it. I mean, that is just like a class teacher telling the student, ki just stop making noise. Where there should have been some accountability at who are the people involved, who are the people who got the funds. It should have been made public. Then only the public trust would be there. But I find nothing. So it's a, as you said, it's a green signal has been given to other scientists that they can also carry on regardless.
Any final thoughts, Amitav, as we close out on
I,
this situation?
I think we require a very strong pressure to bring about ban on gain of function research, and the international I mean, right up to the United Nations, if it is really, I don't know who is there. The WHO is also, we don't know whether what are its agenda now, because USA has also withdrawn from WHO, and WHO is saying ki Nipah virus will bring the next pandemic. So it's already priming the pitch for the, I mean, so that it is just one step is required to spread the virus now, and everything will fall in place. The pandemic treaty will also come, and that also becomes a strong reason for the WHO to bring in the pandemic treaty, and everything will again. So it's a very serious thing. If people if people force their elected representatives to ask questions and stop this gain of function research, and this India case, it can be a case study ki why action has not been taken and how lenient we are to such irregularities, dangerous and hazardous, irresponsible science.
Wonderful. Yes, thank you very much, Amitav, and thank you for all the people who are with us. I hope this was insightful. We will have further updates as time goes on. Please all be careful. Maybe start praying because we could be facing an even more challenging situation in the next few months to a year. Have a great evening, and we look forward to giving you more updates soon. Okay, Amitav.
Thank you. Thank you. Good night. Good night.
Night, night.